Welcome to Food for Thought, the place to explore, celebrate, and manifest a life motivated and defined by unconditional compassion and optimal wellness. Today's episode is zero waste, eco-friendly Halloween treats for trick-or-treaters. We're going to cover some decorations as well. Before we begin, my name is Colleen Patrick-Goudreau. I'm your host. You can find me on social media and at joyfulvegan.com, where you can purchase signed copies of my books, where you can register for live and real-time online cooking classes or private classes, where you can find my library of on-demand recipes and cooking videos, where you can find one-on-one coaching and consultations with me, and where you can now buy gift cards. At joyfulvegantrips.com, you can find details about my upcoming all-inclusive vegan trips. This podcast, as always, is listener supported. So if this podcast is something you value and you would like to enjoy some perks, but also just keep this podcast going, head over to patreon.com/Colleen Patrick-Goudreau. You can also find a link to it from Joyful Vegan to become a supporter today at your chosen level. I'm so grateful to you for supporting this podcast, for subscribing to this podcast, and for leaving ratings and reviews. Hi, everyone. I hope you're doing fabulously well. Oh, the weather this time of year is just my favorite. You've probably heard me say this at every season, but I don't think so. I think I say this mostly only in the autumn. This time of year in Northern California is so incredibly perfect. It's so nostalgic and beautiful. And the light, I must say to David, I don't know, 100 times a day, how much I love this light from the morning all the way until the evening. The weather is crisp and cool, but sunny during the day. The light is golden and low. The animals and the wildlife this time of year, the birds, it's just magic. I think it's also a special time of year. I was going to say it's special because David's birthday is this time of year. Of course, that is true. And David and I were married this time of year, but I think we chose to be married this time of year because we love this time of year so much. And we were married on November 3rd. We celebrated our 20th wedding anniversary last year. So we're celebrating our 21st this year, obviously. We renewed our vows last year for our 20th. And it's just a special time because it's David's birthday this time of year every year. We usually celebrate by hosting some kind of party, as if that's different than any other month. It's not, but truly we do usually have some kind of fall related or Halloween related party or dinner with friends that combine David's birthday with Halloween. We've done many different things over the years. We've had costume parties, we've had surprise parties. One of my favorite things we've done several years in a row, is we've had readings with friends of haunted stories and ghost stories where we each kind of take a portion of a ghost story we've chosen, and everyone, each person kind of reads an excerpt from it, and we go around and we kind of do this around firelight and by candlelight, and in the semi-darkness. We need to keep it somewhat light so we can read what we're reading. We've also done, I think one year we did something that was really fun. We sat around also in the semi-dark by firelight, by candlelight, and we built a ghost story together. So no one knows how it's going to start and no one knows how it's going to end. No one knows what they're going to say when they gets to them, but we build the story together. We kind of create the story together, going around and just building the story. And it's been super fun. We haven't done that in a while. I feel like we need to do that. This is also a special time of year, I think, because it's the beginning of the fall and winter holidays, and I do really relish this time of year. I'm going to share a poem with you at the very end of this episode. There is something, there's a reason the Day of the Dead is celebrated in Mexican culture, and really that the whole idea of Day of the Dead is celebrated in many cultures and in many religions as well. This is a time of death, and that's not a bad thing. It's life. It is life. And so this is a time we tend to go to the cemetery a lot. We have a plot for my mother here at our local historic cemetery, and that's where we'll be buried. And it is a time to recognize that the darkness is coming. the death of all things is coming. Flowers, plants, trees, everything is going into dormancy. And that's an important part of our cycle of life. And so as the darkness starts to become dominant, it's a time to go inward. It's a time to go quiet. It's a time to go deeper. And I really love this time of year for that. And it's the beginning of these holidays: Halloween, Day of the Dead, Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, Christmas, whatever you celebrate. It is just a really special time of year for me, at least. And if it is for you as well, then happy fall holidays. We will be leaving for Rwanda in the middle of November. And we're not coming back home until the middle of December, and we'll be back for Christmas. We'll be home December 18th, and we'll be leaving November 17th. So we'll be gone for a full month in Rwanda, in Botswana, South Africa. We're hosting 2 trips: a trip to Rwanda with our travelers and a trip to Cape Town and Botswana with our travelers. In between, the 4 of us, David and I and Bridie and Seb from World Vegan Travel, will be spending time on the garden route in South Africa and celebrating David's 50th and Seb's 50th this year, 2022, and just spending some time in between our 2 trips. But we'll be back in time for Christmas. It is probably the first time we're not here for Thanksgiving. We usually do host Thanksgiving, and we usually do have it with our friends, but we also host Christmas. So we're hosting Christmas Eve, and we'll be back in time for that. So I'll share that with you. We're going to be, I like themes. We're going to be having a Swedish, Scandinavian theme. It's not just Swedish, even though some of our friends are like Swedish and they want us to just make it Swedish, but it's going to be Scandinavian. So it's going to be also Danish, some Finnish cuisine in there. And so we're going to make it special and magical. And we're going to be, kind of focusing the menu around Swedish cuisine, Danish cuisine. So I'll share more of that with you as we get closer to that. But in the meantime, I hope you have a lovely Halloween and Thanksgiving. We are excited to be traveling again. Our 2023 trips, by the way, are 100% confirmed. That's the Tuscany and Northern Italy trips. There are 2 different trips. And we are going to be announcing our France trips very soon. So our 2023 trips this year are all Europe trips. And one of them is a magical Christmas trip to Alsace, which some of you have joined us for in the past. We've run that trip a few times, and we're running it again in 2023. So if you do want to have a magical Christmas in Alsace in 2023, we're going to be announcing that soon. And we're also going to be having a romantic French countryside trip in September of 2023. And that is going to be beginning in Paris and ending in Bordeaux. And in the in-between, we will be in the Loire Valley and the Dordogne Valley and on the rivers and going to an elephant sanctuary and picnicking and going to the Lascaux Caves and staying in chateau. And it's going to be quite magical. So, well, they're all magical, but that one's going to be incredible in September, beautiful time of year. And in Christmas, we're going to be in Alsace. So if you have been on a trip with us in the past, or if you're on the wait list for either of those trips, you will be hearing about it soon. You get early bird access. So do folks at the superstar level and above as Patreon supporters. So you're going to hear about it soon. And the first 6 people to sign up for each trip, for each the French countryside and the magical Christmas trip, will be part of their own cooking class with me, focused on the cuisine of the region you're joining me at. So go to joyfulvegantrips.com and hopefully you can join us for one of those 4 trips to Europe next year. When I first became vegan and started doing this work, which was 23 years ago, one of the most common questions I was asked was about how to be vegan during the holidays, but especially Halloween, in the sense that parents especially didn't want their kids to feel out of place because they would be discerning about what they would be given as treats during the trick-or-treating ritual. And they didn't want them to feel that they couldn't partake in this just because the majority of the treats would most likely not be suitable for vegans. And so over the years, in my books, in this podcast, I talked about all of the candy and the treats that are suitable for vegans. And yes, it's junk food, but it's vegan junk food, and it's Halloween. It is a special occasion. So I would talk about blow pops and Cracker Jacks and Dots and Airheads and Hubba Bubba Bubblegum and Jolly Ranchers and Jujubes and Mary Janes and Pez and Now and Later and Sour Patch Kids and Swedish Fish and Sweet Tarts, Twizzlers. Those are all suitable for vegans. And of course, corn chips and potato chips and nuts and pretzels and crackers, right? And there are so many more options these days, even still. And so for anyone who's curious, what makes some candy not suitable for vegans is candy that contains some kind of animal product, such as casein, which is animal milk protein, or gelatin, which is the boiled remains of slaughtered animals, or lard would be in some candy, which is animal fat. Rennet and pepsin would be in some, which are enzymes from an animal's stomach. Stearic acid is animal fat. That would be in some candies. Urea, which is derived from the urine and other bodily fluids of animals, would be in some candy. So that is what makes some candies not suitable for vegans. But there are a lot that are, because it's junk, but it's animal-free junk. And I talked all about that, and I've just named some. And as I said, one of the concerns I've heard from parents is that raising a child vegan would make them feel self-conscious about being different. And I assured them, and I assure you now, that if raising your child vegan is consistent with your values of empathy and nonviolence and healthful living and compassionate eating, then there's nothing more to say. You talk to your children about why your family is vegan and why they adhere to those values, why you adhere to those values, and children get it. And when they understand that the values you're instilling reflect compassion for animals, they will take that on as their own ethic, as is often the case. Now, as you become vegan and your children are older, of course, it's more difficult because our habits become instilled in us when we're very young. But still, communication. We talk to our children about why we're making the choices we are, and kids get it and they feel enthusiastic about doing the right thing. At the same time, over the years, I've also recommended some things you can do to make trick-or-treating a little less tricky. So you can, when you trick-or-treat, just make it clear that the rules are not to eat candy until they get home, especially candy they don't know is not suitable for them as vegan, right? That enables them to practice safety and temperance. And that was what my parents' rule was when I was little. So that's the same thing now, right? Just, no, don't eat the candy until you get home. You can have one piece, let them know which ones are vegan. Often you'll be with them, especially if they're younger, and they could have a piece. But when you get home, that's when you can go through everything. Find other vegan parents to trick or treat with and kids to trick or treat with. That does make kids and us as adults feel we're part of a like-minded group that we can relate to. That really matters. Talk about that a lot in my book, The Joyful Vegan. Make your children part of the process of sorting through the non-vegan candy so that they're recognizing their agency and taking this on as their ethic. So make them part of that process. I think that makes a difference. If they tend to get a lot of non-vegan candy, one of the things you can do is have alternatives waiting for them at home so that they can swap out the non-vegan candy for the vegan candy and not feel like they're missing out. So those are some of the suggestions I've given over the years. And, I'm talking a lot about candy. It seems like this holiday is a lot about candy. I think it's also about the quest of going from house to house and collecting the booty. It's about dressing up in exotic costumes or scary costumes. It's about being with friends. It's about having fun. And especially now that COVID has died down enough that we can go about our lives and still feel safe and not worry so much about the higher risks that we did when this virus first came on the scene. I think we're all very excited to get out there and experience that connection and fun and community. So put an emphasis on those things more than just the candy. And of course, I'm someone who likes to find meaning in all occasions and holidays and days. So sit down with your family and talk about what this holiday means. Talk about the Day of the Dead. Talk about the history of Halloween and this time of year as the light fades and as we recognize that the earth is going to sleep. So it's a time to talk about that with our children, with our older children, with each other. And I stand by all of that. I stand by everything I have said over the years. It's not as unusual for children to say, I'm vegan and I don't want that candy, because we've just gotten to a point in our culture, which is nice to see the change from when I became vegan 23 years ago to now, because people have food preferences and allergies. And it's not such a big deal for someone to say, I'm fill in the blank. I'm allergic to nuts. I'm gluten-free. I'm whatever, and I don't want that candy. But I still think it's helpful to remind each other of some of the ways in which we can navigate that socially. So there you have it. And more is in the 30-day vegan challenge, more is in the Joyful Vegan, but there you have it. But over the years, and very recently, in the last few years, as you know, something changed for me. And I know it's been something that's been inspiring to many of you. And that is another consideration that I had to look at this time of year, specifically Halloween. And that is to live as package and plastic free as possible, zero waste. And so it's been a few years now. And when I first started making this effort, I had to revisit kind of all of those options that I just recommended, the Twizzlers, the things that are vegan. And that's true. And that's all true. And I stand by that. But for those of us who are looking to have an even lighter footprint on the earth, I had to start looking at zero waste candy options. Now, I want to say this with everything related to zero waste. I've said this a number of times. It's not about being perfect, just like being vegan is not about being perfect, but even more so with zero waste. It is difficult to be 100% in this world of convenience and packaging and plastic. And so there are exceptions that we're often forced to make. And Halloween might be one of them for you. You might say, I'm not even going to worry about it. It's too much to think about. I just want it to be easy. I want it to be inexpensive. And so you might just say, I'm just going to go get that plastic wrapped candy at my local store and I'm fine with it. And that's fine. Okay. What I'm here to do today is to stretch those zones a little bit more and say, okay, fine. And here are some options perhaps you haven't thought of. And here are some ways we can have maybe a more eco-friendly Halloween. And I'm going to talk a little bit about decorations as well. I walk around our neighborhood and almost every house is decorated for Halloween. And we've been here now in this neighborhood for over 10 years, and I do recognize the same decorations out again and again. And of course, that's one of the easiest things to do. And the most eco-friendly things we could do is putting out the same decorations every year. But we'll talk more about that when we get to the decorations, because there are some things we do that could probably be done a little better in terms of, again, what winds up in landfills, what really goes straight from, kind of the store to this, our yards for a couple weeks, then to the landfills. And we were walking last night, talking to some neighbors. We walk in our neighborhood very often, and we do stop and talk to neighbors very frequently. And of course, we stopped and talked to some neighbors, and invariably Halloween came up. And I will say that Halloween on our street is a pretty big deal. It's one of those destination streets. I have to say, as someone who grew up in a neighborhood when I was young and trick-or-treating in New Jersey, in a residential neighborhood, it was only the people who lived in the neighborhood and who walked around that neighborhood. But maybe I was missing something. Maybe there were people who came from other neighborhoods too. I don't remember, but I just walked outside my door. I was lucky enough to be able to do that. And we just trick-or-treated to all of our neighbors' houses. But it's a thing, I don't know, here, maybe it's because it's a more urban area where people may not have access to, just a lot of houses to go to and trick-or-treat to. So they come to other neighborhoods. But our street is one of those destinations. And so we are descended upon every year by trick-or-treaters. And so with COVID obviously affecting Halloween for a couple years, now things are returning to, if normal is the word, and we're seeing a lot more trick-or-treaters again. Now we, specifically, David and I, where we live, it's a very unique situation because we live in a house that is 100 feet up from the street. There are steps and switchbacks going up to our house. So it's very unique. And everyone on our street always comments on the fact that we probably don't get a lot of trick-or-treaters. And the truth is we could probably make this a really fun destination house because the kids are usually pretty excited to come up to the house and the parents aren't. The kids are usually, I think they think there's going to be something really exciting at the top. And the parents are like, yeah, go ahead, I'm not doing it because it is 100 steps. And, not every year we've been here. We often travel in the fall or we go out on Halloween for one reason or another. Again, it's usually around David's birthday. So it might fall on a weekend that we were out to dinner or what have you. And so we shut the lights off. But there have been years where we've had parties and it's been on Halloween and our friends are all dressed up in costumes and trick-or-treaters come up and we lure them up in the sense that we keep our lights on and we have candy. And it's been different every year in terms of what I hand out. But for several years, and I'm always someone who has used Halloween as an opportunity for advocacy. I used to put like why vegans in kids' bags. Like I used to put pamphlets in trick-or-treaters' bags. I'm still not above that. I would still do that today. And I've always liked finding opportunities to make it be a more thoughtful treat that I give the kids. And, I'm always thinking, okay, what do I want it to be? I want to make sure they know it's vegan. I want it to be thoughtful. And of course, I want it to be eco-friendly. So it's not just since I've been zero waste that I think about this. It's been for years. I'm always trying to find a way to, again, stretch those comfort zones and have us think a little bit more deeply about what we're doing. And so I've often tried to find ways to do that for the trick-or-treaters. And by the way, what I'm talking about today really isn't as much about how your kid can experience a more vegan, zero waste trick-or-treating experience, because of course that's almost impossible because most of it's out of your control other than what I've already shared with you. This is about what you're giving out, what I'm giving out, we give out as candy or treats to the trick-or-treaters. So one year, a couple years in a row, I've done cupcakes. And, if it's kids who know me and we go down to the street level and I'm hanging with other neighbors, I will bring cupcakes and, they can have it's, Halloween related cupcakes or cookies or something like that. But to trick-or-treaters, it's a little harder because, they're not going to be wrapped or unfortunately, people still have a suspicion of homemade treats, which is really unfortunate because even that whole rumor about razor blades and apples was debunked. And that was from when I was a kid. But people still have this notion that there's something suspicious about homemade baked goods, which is really unfortunate because they're eating the crappiest, carcinogenic candy. But, don't take a baked good from a neighbor. Anyway, I'll still probably do some kind of baked good, especially if I go down and see our neighbors at all. But in terms of luring the kids up and having something here when they get here, there's a bit of pressure on us. I'll say me because David's not the one who's leading this. It's usually me. And there's pressure because I think the kids feel that if they're going to make the trek, there better be something really good at the top. So one year, this was before zero waste, I handed out organic lollipops. They were from Trader Joe's, right? And it was really funny because they were, I love lollipops still. I had to stop myself from eating them, but it was really funny. There was one year we were downstairs. It was actually on a year where Halloween fell on a Saturday night or something. And we were having a party and it was for David's birthday / Halloween. And all of our friends were dressed up. And we started off just downstairs, kind of meeting all of our friends downstairs. And so we're all in our costumes. And I was standing out there. Have I shared this before? And a couple kids walked by and I saw one of them look up at the house and go, whoa, that's a lot of stairs. Wow, that's. And the other kid who was walking said something like, oh yeah, I walked all the way up those stairs one year and all I got was lousy lollipop. And I was standing right there and I was like, hi, I'm standing right here. I'm right here. I gave you that lollipop and it was an organic lollipop. It's a good lollipop. And he's like, whatever. And he just kept walking. And so I thought about that obviously for years because I feel like I have the pressure. So I'll share with you some zero waste, eco-friendly, plastic-free, package-free ideas. And I'll tell you which one I'm doing as we get there. So here are some suggestions. Now this isn't 100% zero waste, zero, but plastic-free, definitely plastic-free, but not necessarily package-free. So the first one is foil wrapped candy or foil wrapped chocolates. That's where you're going to mostly find the foil wraps is in chocolate bars or even individual chocolates. Now, In many bulk stores, you can find small individually foil wrapped chocolates. And of course, by default, I'm talking about everything here that's going to be suitable for vegans here. I'm not talking about milk chocolate that has cow's milk in it. So I'm obviously talking about chocolate suitable for vegans. So just, you'll discern that yourself. And so even though they're loose, they're individually wrapped and they're wrapped in foil. Now you can scoop them out of the bulk bin, buy as many as you want. They're sold by the weight. And then you can do that with chocolate bars as well. They're going to be a little more expensive, but maybe if you have a situation like me where you don't have a ton of trick-or-treaters, you're willing to spend a little bit more on, a fair trade, chocolate, dairy-free, whatever, beautiful chocolate that's wrapped in, paper or wrapped in foil and paper, something like that, because you're not going to get a ton, right? You can get a pack of 24 or something like that. Depends on how many trick-or-treaters you get. The only caveat with this option is that it's better than plastic, in my opinion. I think it's better than plastic, but you still have to trust the recipient to properly recycle the foil, right? And when you recycle foil, by the way, for those of you who do have foil recycling, aluminum, right, tin recycling in your neighborhood, the best way to ensure that it's going to get recycled is to create a ball of clean foil. So you can just keep foil over time, make sure it's clean, and then create a ball. And you want that ball to be large enough so that it doesn't blow away. So are the chances that someone's going to get that little foil wrapped candy and hang on to that foil and wait until there's a ball the size large enough that it's not going to blow away and then put it in recycling? Probably not. Is it still better than plastic in terms of the production of it and in terms of just the life of it? I still think yes. And it's still packaging, right? But don't do nothing because you can't do everything, right? Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good and all that. So it's still better than plastic in my opinion, but that's one option. Another option is boxed candies. And so you have things like Dum Dums or Airheads or Sour Patch Kids. You're going to have these things in boxes, raisins in boxes. Raisins are nature's candy. Raisins are still an option. I'm sticking with that. Raisins are an option. So the boxes, again, it's either recyclable or compostable. If you have a home composter, you can compost that paper. Or if you have a curbside city compost system, you can compost that paper box. So that's an option. Lots of boxed candies. The caveat, again, is that you're relying on the recipient to do the right thing with the packaging. The caveat with the foil wrapped candies, especially if you get them in a kind of packaging, if you don't find it in bulk, but the box candies as well, if you can't find them individually, then they're probably still in a plastic bag that you buy, and that's going to wind up in a landfill. So yeah, I'm aware that this is annoying, that it's on the consumer to do the right thing, but that's why we're here. So that's another thought. Paper wrapped candies, same thing. Pixie sticks, for instance, they're a great idea. They're paper wrapped, same thing. You can find some chocolate bars sometimes wrapped in paper. Equal Exchange has some. Rocca, I think, has some, and they're in paper. So again, you're relying on the recipient, but it's better than plastic in my opinion. And you can compost it if you have your own composter or if you have a city compost system. So paper wrapped candies or paper wrapped chocolate. Then you've got gum and mints, and some of them are also in boxes. So again, paper. Some of them are in just paper packaging. Some of them come in those little tins. So whether that's gum or mints or little candies in metal tins, that's an idea. You could reuse those metal tins. You can recycle them. The gum is a perfect example of, gum. A lot of gum has plastic in the gum itself. So there are plastic-free gums, like Simply Gum is a company that has plastic-free gum. You can look it up, just type in plastic-free gum. But the packaging is plastic-free as well. They're in paper. So again, you have to rely on the recipient to do the right thing, but you can compost it or you can recycle it. Now, loose treats, I mentioned the cupcakes or cookies. If you want to do that, I think of another really great idea is if you want to make some homemade caramel corn. It's a great recipe in the joy of vegan baking. And you can make Rice Krispie treats, same thing. There's lots of wonderful recipes for vegans out there, and you can give them away. You can even wrap them yourself in, maybe you still have plastic wrap in your kitchen. Maybe you have parchment paper, maybe you have foil, like maybe you want to wrap it in a way, maybe you have just little paper bags. You can wrap it yourself. Again, it's the case, I think, where you want the kids to know that it's safe, or maybe you know the kids, because otherwise it might just wind up in the garbage because we're suspicious of homemade treats. So I think that's more of a matter of like maybe if there's a party you're going to, or you know all of the family, you're bringing it as your gift, as your treat. Candy in bulk, full disclosure, this is what I'm going to be doing. Now, I am lucky enough to have several places in my vicinity. I would say my neighborhood, but it's really in many of the neighborhoods around me that where I can go to bulk stores and bulk bins and get bulk candy. But you can too, I'm sure. And I'm sure there's places around you that also have bulk nuts. So it doesn't have to just be candy. It could be nuts. It could be chocolate covered nuts. Some of them are going to have dark chocolate, so there's not going to be animal products in it. I'm not saying that all dark chocolate doesn't have animal products, but just look at the ingredients. And nuts are wonderful. It could be ginger, like candied ginger. There are a lot of options for bulk items that are conducive to Halloween for trick-or-treating. So I'm going to be going to my Re-Up Refill store, and I am going to get nuts and they have like jelly beans and gummy bears and chocolates. And I'm going to actually put them in individual little, I have bags that I've had just for years. I have little sachets, and I'm going to put them in their little pack. I'm going to make my own little packets, right? I'm also going to put a little note that just says, from our local Re-Up Refill store, because I want people to know that they're from our local store. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I have another thing I'm going to be doing, and I'll share that with you in a moment. The next option, by the way, this is 8 out of 10 option, is hot cocoa sachets. There are plenty of I shouldn't say plenty. There are hot cocoa envelopes that are suitable for vegans. There never used to be, but now there are. And so you can just do individual packets of the hot chocolate. So go buy a couple boxes of the hot chocolate mix and then just hand out the hot chocolate packet. That could be something that goes into each trick-or-treat bag. And then, if you're getting a vegan one, it's going to say that it's vegan, like it might say add plant-based milk, or you could make one yourself. And again, that could be something you bring to a party or to people who know you. I know you're probably going to think I'm boring to mention the next one. That's number 9, which is fruit. And again, you could do something like little clementines, little cuties. You can put little cloves in them. Again, if it's someone you can draw little jack-o'-lanterns on them. You can use cloves to go into the clementines and make a little face on them. And those could be for trick-or-treaters. I know that we just think like the trick-or-treaters are like, that's crap. But I do think that kids are also being taught to eat a little healthier these days, and their parents might be happy that there's things like fruit and they will use them. So apples, pears, clementines, the little cuties, I think is a really great idea. Number 10 is another thing I'm going to be doing, which are those little mini pumpkins. So you can find these in pumpkin patches if you're still heading out to a pumpkin patch before Halloween. And you can get a whole box for trick-or-treaters. You can probably find them in local grocery stores. They're adorable. Of course, you can use them and cook with them and eat them, but they're biodegradable. They're adorable. And I'm going to put a little sign on mine that says leave out for wildlife. So it's a treat wildlife, leave outside for animals to enjoy. I'm going to put that on, I'm going to tie it to the little top of the pumpkins. So there's an opportunity to let kids know that this is something they could be thinking about, right? So those are the edible suggestions I have. I'd love to hear yours. And then I have non-edibles. I mean, I guess technically you could say that the mini pumpkins aren't edible for the kids, but they're edible for the wildlife. So they're edibles. So the non-edible suggestions, and I know you're like, oh, it's too practical. Kids aren't going to want them. They're too boring. I don't agree. And maybe that's just because I'm a total geek. So I'm just going to say, I'm going to throw this out there. And I know that there are some kids who are going to appreciate lip balm. There are lots of zero-waste lip balms out there. Soap. You can find one. Maybe you make soap. Maybe you do crafts yourself. A soap wrapped in paper, and you can find those in a lot of stores and a lot of farmers markets. Bamboo or paper straws. Same thing. I think, once they whittle through all of their treats, I think in the end, it's going to be something where we're like, oh, this is like my own straw. Like this is special, especially a bamboo straw they can keep for themselves. Pencils, same thing. I think there's still things that kids use. It could be colored pencils. They could just be regular pencils, but I think they'll use them. Friendship bracelets are, I think, a really fun idea. And there's also friendship bracelets kits. You can include instructions, and you can give a friendship bracelet kit to kids for trick or treat. They might think it's a trick. all of the non-crappy ones, right. When I say crappy, I don't mean bad. I mean bad for you. Right. So they might think those are all the good ones, but I think there's going to be some kids who like some of these. So those are some ideas I have, and I'm going to share some ideas with you for decorating for Halloween as well. I'm not going into costumes, though. I will say the same thing for costumes that I say for decoration, and that has to do with reusing things that we have had in the past and using things that we already have in our house. And there's a lot of fun things we can do with that. But before we get there, I just want to make sure you know that this podcast is supported by listeners like you, and you can support this podcast at $5 a month. You can support it at $10 a month. You can support it at any level that works for you. If everyone who listened to this podcast just supported it at $5 a month, I would be able to do so much more than I'm doing now. As it is, I've got some incredible supporters at every level. Well, everyone who supports it at every level is incredible. And I've got some wonderful supporters who are at various levels, but they deserve and receive recognition in every episode. And those are benefactors like David Cabrera and Alexander Gray, angels like Brooke Boussard and Michal Stone, Gina Stryler and Carrie Parker, heroes like Simon Small, Angelica Lofton, Jennifer Statmiller, Jennifer Watkins, Geraldine Hilmar, PJ Schuster, Denise Hoskins, Ranjini Mohan, and Tina Strassheim, and my newest bestie, Amanda Jane Allred. Thank you so much, Amanda. And if you'd like to join these amazing people and join this community and all of the patrons who are supporting this work and with whom we will have patron-only events. We just had one this past weekend. Please head over to patreon.com/Colleen Patrick-Goudreau. Find the level that works for you. Every level matters. And before we return to the content in today's episode, I want to remind you that I have a related podcast episode you might be interested in. And that's, when I say related, I mean Halloween content. And that's the animal-related Halloween films. It's called Animal-Related Halloween Films. I produced it a couple years ago. Please don't worry. I don't recommend films in which animals are the victims of violence. So that's what makes this list, I think, unique, is they're films that animals are involved, but they're not victims of violence. So check that one out if you're interested. Animal-related Halloween films. And I include the link in the show notes as well. Okay, so let's talk about decor, and you can kind of translate this to costuming as well. So zero waste for me is all about using what you already have and valuing what you have, and use is value. So you might have clothes sitting in the closet. You may have worn a costume 10 years ago and it's just been sitting there and you haven't done anything with it, or just shirts and outfits that could be put together and create a costume. You can also go on something like Buy Nothing and borrow something. If you're just being creative and putting a costume together made from, things you already have around the house, ask people in your neighborhood, ask friends, ask people on Buy Nothing, and just put it together yourself. It is about using what you already have and not going out and buying something that is cheap, that's plastic, that is just going to sit in a landfill after you just wear it once. Again, I grew up having costumes. It was a different costume every year. I will say I probably was in the crossover generation because some of my costumes were made by family and neighbors, and they weren't just the cheap plastic masks, even though I did have those masks that we threw away. I do have very fond memories of Halloween. I have very fond memories of many of my costumes, but they weren't all just cheap plastic. And today I think we're kind of returning to a place of like, what does it look like to make our own, or to just put it together with stuff we have? Some of my favorite costumes that I've done over the years have just been, kind of drawing on an animal face, maybe having, a little headband with animal ears and putting on a brown vest and I'm a squirrel, right? Whatever. One of my favorite costumes is when I was Diane Fossey one year for Halloween. I put my hair in a braid, like Diane used to wear it, and over to the side. I had a Patagonia vest. I had, just basically, hiking pants, hiking shoes, and I got some stuffed gorillas. I actually borrowed stuffed gorillas, like little stuffed animals, right? Plush gorillas from neighbors. I actually was going around, this was like years ago. This was before I was like officially zero waste. And I was going around and borrowing. Maybe it was when I was just first starting out. I don't know. But I went out around and borrowed little stuffed gorillas, and I had them kind of all around me. Like I affixed them, I kind of tied them to me. So they were kind of on my person, and I was Diane Fossey. And that was a pretty awesome costume. It was pretty easy to put together, and so on and so on. So it's about being creative, and it's about using what we have. And same thing with decorations. You might have decorations that you put out every year for Halloween, for Thanksgiving, for Christmas, whatever. And just using the same ones again and again. I just put out our little scarecrow decorations. I know everyone has a different experience of Halloween. I'm a bit more on the fall, autumnal harvest side. I don't like super scary. I'll put out maybe ghosts, but I just like pumpkins and scarecrows and like corn stalks and that kind of thing. And again, I do appreciate and celebrate Day of the Dead and celebrate this being a time of year that we go into death and darkness. I'm not like bothered by skeletons, but everywhere I go, I feel like everything's just all about like making it scary. And I don't like any decorations. There was a house down the street. They've since moved. Well, the house is still there, but the people who lived there have since moved. So I don't think I'll see them again here, but they're still out there. I remember one of the things they would put out every year were traps, like rat traps, mouse traps with, fake rubber rats. But still, the message that was being conveyed is that it's okay to trap rats. And so I would actually, one of my only feats of direct action was taking these rats out of the traps and just kind of putting them right next to the trap. I did that one year. They probably saw me from the window and thought I was nuts, but I was just like, I hate passing this house because always these poor little rats in the trap. They weren't real. You get it. Anyway, so that's what I feel like a lot of the decor is. I have these little scarecrows. They're on a stick. They're sitting outside, downstairs. They're falling apart. Whatever. I get pumpkins. That's definitely my favorite, and that's my first suggestion. So in addition to like using what you have already, pumpkins, number one favorite decor for me. You can do jack-o'-lanterns. I'm not that patient. I don't have the patience to do jack-o'-lanterns, but you can do jack-o'-lanterns, or you can just draw on them. I like keeping them just intact because within a few days, they're no longer intact because the wildlife eats them, which I'm very happy about. Our squirrels love the pumpkins, and they make short shrift of them within days. So I usually put pumpkins out and they're gone pretty quickly. But if yours last, then you can bring them inside afterwards as you get ready for the next holiday, right? Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever, however you're decorating, and then bring the pumpkins in. And of course you can use them and eat them or, compost them or what have you. But mine go out to the squirrels. So that's one of my favorite decorations. Lighting is a really fun way to create an ambiance. I'm thinking of maybe I feel like I have some Halloween lighting that we've had in the past. You can find some of those blinker lights. And again, you can borrow these. That I remember having something like that shone on the house and they would blink. And then one year, what we also did, this was also related to a party we were throwing for David, was music. So putting out a Bluetooth speaker. And you can do this, again, ours is like pretty far from the house. Our house is pretty far from the street. So we'd have to set it up in a way that our Bluetooth speaker isn't somewhere where, someone would take the Bluetooth speaker, because we have to keep it far enough down from the house for it to have the impact for passersby and to lure them up. But music is a really fun way. You can find Halloween music. It could be scary. You could do Bach's Toccata and Fugue in D minor on organ. I'll play it for you. Like that's, kind of a fun thing. One year, a friend who came, he was Nosferatu. So that's like a perfect kind of music for like vampire, Nosferatu kind of theme, and you can play that music, and so that's a really fun way to lure kids and get them, it's kind of spooky. So lighting, music. The other thing I mentioned scarecrows. One of the things I like to do is I kind of like the Sleepy Hollow effect of, it could be anything. This is kind of like Sleepy Hollow, but also, I don't know, headless farm hand. Because, you get some old jeans, you get a flannel shirt, you stuff it with hay, which is also compostable. And then he's like holding his head. I've done that a couple years, but again, like the squirrels ate it really quickly. And there was one year when I was doing that where it was so rainy and it was just getting really gross because it was getting like really wet and it was just sitting there for weeks and it was just not great. It was getting moldy. So that's something to consider. If you can put it somewhere where it's covered. We have a neighbor who does that as well. And, it's covered. Ours is not covered where I would put it because again, it's down by the street and there's no coverage down there. Hay bales, another kind of decoration you can use. And again, it's compostable. Signs, you can make your own signs. You can use those kind of old wooden, boards and, you can buy a sign and, you can find them, you can borrow them, you can make them yourself. You can turn them into gravestones, that kind of thing. So you can make signs that say danger or, whatever, be creative. There's lots of people who are much more creative than I am and do that kind of thing. And yeah, you can make your own ghost. You can just put a white sheet out, tie it with some twine. And again, I think with that and some music and some lighting, it can be really spooky and really evocative of whatever you're trying to evoke. As I said, for me, it's usually something to do with fall. And so I wanted to read a poem to you. I haven't read poetry or literature to you in a very long time. And, I've been talking all about this idea of the world going to sleep, as we do for the season or for good. And that is what this time of year reminds us of, is that we are part of a cycle, and death and dormancy is one of those cycles. So I wanted to read this poem by Mary Oliver. She's been on my mind a lot lately. I've been reading a lot more of her poetry, and I think she's incredible, and I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with her poetry. So this one is called When Death Comes, and I'll read it. When death comes like the hungry bear in autumn, when death comes and takes all the bright coins from his purse to buy me and snaps the purse shut, when death comes like the measle pox, when death comes like an iceberg between the shoulder blades, I want to step through the door full of curiosity, wondering, what is it going to be like, that cottage of darkness? And therefore, I look upon everything as a brotherhood and a sisterhood, and I look upon time as no more than an idea, and I consider eternity as another possibility. And I think of each life as a flower, as common as a field daisy, and as singular, and each name a comfortable music in the mouth, tending, as all music does, towards silence, and each body a lion of courage and something precious to the earth. When it's over, I want to say all my life I was a bride married to amazement. I was the bridegroom taking the world into my arms. When it's over, I don't want to wonder if I have made of my life something particular and real. I don't want to find myself sighing and frightened or full of argument. I don't want to end up simply having visited this world. For the Animals, this is Colleen Patrick-Goudreau. Thanks for listening and happy Halloween.